He's like chanting for trans acceptance while doing things that hurt trans people.
Yeah, he's doing things that hurt trans people because he's confessing in the song the ways that he's hurt trans people and talked about how he didn't know it hurt them and then telling you how he learned that it hurt them, which is ideally a method of making people who's listening to him, cishet people, look at themselves in the mirror through the song and be like, holy shit, have I been doing things that have been hurting trans people as well that I didn't know about? Also, I don't know that we should have this expectation that every person talking about trans people in a positive way as a cis person should be like the perfect ally, because at that point I don't think we're gonna have any allies. It's incredibly rare that you're gonna find a cishet person that's like one of like the best stalwart defenders of trans issues. Most people go through a very messy process of unlearning the bigotry that they were taught when they were kids in order to get to the point that they're at now, and they might not even be the best, allies at this current moment, but at least they're not actively transphobic. They might not be the perfect defenders of trans people, but they're working on it. And I think that is something to be celebrated in some small ways. So this was randomly brought to my attention because of a Twitter DM I got. It's incredibly rare that the message requests in my Twitter DMs actually hold anything of value, but this time around, they did. Apparently, Samantha Lux, as of yesterday at the time of recording this, May 26th, has put out a video on Kendrick Lamar's Auntie Diaries. I recently put out a video as well. You can see right here, you can be a link to it in the description or something. It's an hour long. This one that we're looking at is 12 minutes and 30 seconds. So obviously I'm correct, just because my video is longer, and that's really all you need to know. But the title is Kendrick Lamar Attempts Trans Allyism in Auntie Diaries, and I'm being told that Samantha Lux disagrees with my take. Now, not directly, I don't know what I'm referencing in the video, I doubt it. Samantha Lux is a far larger creator than I am, and may ever will be, but I'm interested. From one trans person to another, I'm curious as to what the disagreements are. I think I know what we're gonna get from this video. The major theme being that the song was not written for trans people, but rather it was written for cis people, usually specifically cishet black men, but just cis people in general. And it was written in such a way to try to help them see themselves reflected in the lyrics. So like if you were to like not say the F slur, like the full word like he does in the song, but say F slur, F slur, F slur instead, well, a lot of people, like, what the hell's an F slur? Like nobody knows what you mean by that. A lot of Normans out there. When it comes to the misgendering and whatnot, it's a narrative retelling of events that happened in Kendrick's past. It's possible to have your disagreements with the song, and I'm curious to see what Samantha's are, because I've watched a video of hers before through prolific child abuse enabler and advocate Matt Walsh. Unfortunately, I did enjoy Samantha's critique of his book in her video there, but let's engage in some trans infighting. Why don't we?
I've been getting a lot of requests to talk about Kendrick Lamar's new song, Auntie Diaries, in which he talks about his experience with his aunt, his trans uncle, as well as his cousin who is also trans. Some people are saying it's this pro-trans anthem. It's this song about him being an ally and all this stuff, but the other side of the community does not agree.
So I will say that it is certainly a pro-trans song in my opinion, but I don't know that it's him necessarily being like this great ally. I don't think that that was his objective in the song. He is definitely trying to help people become more empathetic and understanding of trans people when previously they wouldn't be, because of the indoctrination or the brainwashing, the lack of education, or the lack of having met a trans person ever, by using his experiences to illustrate that. I don't know, like you could call it allyship, but I don't know that that was necessarily his goal. He just wanted to show how he's grown as a person and hopefully help other people see themselves reflected in his own life. And then hopefully through that, start to try to chip away at the homophobia and transphobia that he seems to see as a problem in the communities that he's currently trying to talk to, which isn't the trans community.
There are a few things that I'm like, was that necessary? And yeah, with no further ado, let's get right into the video. So obviously I can't post the song in this video. I can't listen to any of the lyrics, anything like that. If you guys are interested in hearing the song, if you haven't already, go ahead and do that right now and then come back. Or actually listen after.
It's a really good song too. The construction of the instrumental is very good in my opinion. It's a very progressive, building upon itself instrumental that when it gets to the climax of the song, the apex of the song, it's very, very powerful in my opinion. It's very moving.
There isn't a music video for this, but I am interested to see if there will be one.
I would be shocked if there was a music video. So like a lot of people have been like, oh, well, how is Kendrick Lamar going to perform this song at a live event? I don't think that he will. It doesn't seem like a song that you would use for that. You'd probably perform N95, you'd perform Count Me Out, you'd probably perform Silent Hill. Like, there's a variety of songs on the project that you'd perform at a live show. I just don't think Auntie Diaries is one. So I just wouldn't expect there to be a music video for this one, but it would be interesting to see how it would work if there was one.
I gotta say, The song did not start out good. I mean, it got there towards the end, which we'll get into, but I mean, this isn't really the rough.
It didn't start good, but it kind of got there toward the end. Now, I wonder if that was intentional or not. Because if you think about it, we get into this song, you find out that Kendrick Lamar, when it comes to his understanding of trans and queer people in general, was a bit of a rough start as well. But now eventually he's gotten pretty good towards the present, perhaps.
I was just referring to, but in the beginning it says 3 times, it repeats 3 times. Heart plays in the ways the mind can't figure out. It's a quote that says, this is how we conceptualize human beings.
As far as I'm aware, the album goes on to refute Eckhart Tolle as well. And it's not like promotion of him.
Referring to this internal battle that he's having between, you know, what he's been taught to believe about his aunt and his cousin and how he actually feels about his aunt and his cousin. I keep saying aunt. That's just because the song's called Auntie Diaries and he keeps saying aunt, aunt, aunt throughout the whole song.
It's too late now. I'm canceling Samantha Lux. It's over. We're misgendering on the timeline. It's done. I'm sorry. You can't do that. Samantha Lux, apparently not the best. I'm just kidding.
We're talking about an uncle. We're talking about a trans uncle. The first line of the next verse and the first line of the next few verses, it's all the same, is, my auntie is a man now. Which, I mean, it's not the worst line, I guess, but if your aunt is a man now, wouldn't that be your uncle?
Yes.
Sometimes parents who are transgender or parents after they come out will say, oh, you can still call me dad or you can still call me mom. That is a thing that happens. Maybe that's a similar situation. Maybe the person that he's referring to says, you can still call me your aunt. I don't really care. But I'm going to call this person his uncle. That's just what makes sense to me. Throughout the next few verses, he goes...
So, to clear up my understanding, anyway, of that, is, in my view, it is a narrative retelling. So whenever he says, my auntie is a man now, and then later on in the song says, Demetrius is Marianne now, in my view, that's literally him quoting himself. Because it's a narrative retelling, it takes place starting maybe even before elementary school, then middle school, and then later on in Kendrick's life to the present day. In the past, you would imagine Kendrick Lamar was saying, my auntie is a man now, my auntie, like a kid would, right? Because you've been told by your parents or whoever else, like, no, your auntie is a man now. So then you go on to say that. And throughout the song, he ends up picking up more, as we'll see, that those things actually hurt his aunt or can hurt his aunt. Well, uncle now. Like, I can understand why people would not like that. But if you look at it through the context of what I think the purpose of the song is and the direction of the song is, then it seems to make sense. The fact that he's saying these things, in my view, is an expression of guilt. He feels bad for misgendering his uncle. And because of that, he's admitting to it on a studio album to millions of people. I feel like that's something you would want somebody who is an ally to trans people to do. To admit where they have been wrong in the past, because nobody's perfect. And that's what it seems like he's doing.
Back and between using she and her for his aunt and using he and him for his aunt or his uncle. I'm so confused. This is exactly one of the reasons why you shouldn't refer to people after they transition as they were an aunt and now they're an uncle. It gets confusing. It seems kind of like he's using she and her to clarify that he's talking about before his aunt transitioned. His uncle, fuck. You know what? You guys know what I mean. I say aunt, I say uncle. It's going to be interchangeable. I just can't. I think
based gender abolitionist Samantha Lux. Aunt, uncle, doesn't matter. What is gender? It doesn't exist. It was made up. I agree.
Like, I get he's an artist and it's for art and it's for impact's sake and, you know, he's just trying to do something. I don't care. It's unnecessary. You don't need to stop. If you're going to make this attempt at being a trans ally and make this trans anthem, which it does seem like he's trying to do, it does seem like he's trying to make this song to be like, this is how I overcame my prejudice and overcame my transphobia and learned to accept my family members. Like, if you're going to make a song with that as your goal, you should probably get the people's pronouns right. You should probably...
I feel like we're just missing the point. I don't want to be rude or anything, but all the arguments that I've heard so far, it just seems like we've read a variety of people who share those opinions on Twitter, and we're just repeating it. Don't reference your past misgendering in a direct way for artistic purposes feels way more limiting than I care to indulge in. Yeah, I don't know, like, this is what I'm saying, though. Like, the song is not written for the trans community. It's not. Now, obviously, it talks about trans issues, but it's a song written to be delivered to what Kendrick Lamar, you would assume, understands to be his primary demographic, which probably isn't the entire trans community. There's trans people who enjoy Kendrick Lamar's music. I'm one of them. But, like, there are more cishet people in his audience that could do well with seeing another cishet person talk about how in the past they have been transphobic, homophobic, or whatever, and then have the story develop into how they unlearned that bigotry and then have come out in the other end understanding a little bit more. Like, at the end of it, Kendrick Lamar's not even like a fixed person. Like, he's not even like the biggest advocate by his own words, by his own writing toward the end. At the end of the song, which hopefully we'll be able to talk about later as well, his growth isn't over. So he says, "You said, Kendrick, ain't no room for contradiction," quoting his cousin, who is a trans woman. "To truly understand love switch position, F slur, F slur, F slur, we can say it together, but only if you let a white girl say N-word." That's him quoting his cousin. So like at that point, like he's not even like a fully formed, fully fledged like advocate for trans issues, right? He's still not even like a perfect trans ally, because the story being told in the song is his development to get to the point that he's at now in the present. So like I don't think he's like trying to like make this pro-trans anthem and like be this crusader for trans liberation. I think he's just trying to tell his story about how, because of the influence of the positive relationships he had to his trans family members, he unlearned the bigotry that was forced upon him through religious teaching, lack of education, and through learned behavior from other bigoted people, and has come to the point that he's at now, seemingly less, bigoted. Right?
He's like chanting for trans acceptance while doing things that hurt trans people. It's like posting 1 million paper flyers around the world saying save the trees.
I don't know. This is kind of a letdown, really. I want to re-listen to this because I feel like I have some shit to say, but...
He's like chanting for trans acceptance while doing things that hurt trans people.
Yeah, he's doing things that hurt trans people because he's confessing in the song the ways that he's hurt trans people and talked about how he didn't know it hurt them, and then telling you how he learned that it hurt them, which is ideally a method of making people who's listening to him, cishet people, look at themselves in the mirror through the song and be like, holy shit, have I been doing things that have been hurting trans people as well that I didn't know about? Holy fuck, I didn't know that this was actually a thing, because a lot of people have never met a trans person. A lot of people are very uneducated on trans issues. So like, I can understand why people get upset about it. I think it's valid to hear the dead naming, hear the misgendering, and react with pain, like I said in the tweet thread that I wrote about it the day of, because that's what the song is about. Also, I don't know that we should have this expectation that every person talking about trans people in a positive way as a cis person should be like the perfect ally, because at that point I don't think we're going to have any allies. It's incredibly rare that you're going to find a cishet person that's like one of like the best stalwart defenders of trans issues. Most people go through a very messy process of unlearning the bigotry that they were taught when they were kids in order to get to the point that they're at now, and they might not even be the best, allies at this current moment, but at least they're not actively transphobic. You know what I mean? They're not working in the opposite direction. They might not be the perfect defenders of trans people, but they're working on it. And I think that is something to be celebrated in some small ways. I like to see people grow and learn more as they get older. I feel like we should be able to give a little bit more credit to him than what's been given in this video. Let's be frank, there's people who are like Kendrick that won't understand unless they heard it in a song from Kendrick. There's unfortunately quite a bit of transphobia in some pockets of the black community, even towards fellow black trans women who need someone like Kendrick to redirect their perception. Yeah, and that's also true. The fact that Kendrick is also specifically referencing the black community, not only in the Heart Part 5, which dropped before, but also throughout Mr. Morale, he also talks about the black community specifically. Like, black trans femme people face seemingly inordinate amounts of vitriol from society and are also some of the least visible. The fact that Kendrick Lamar is using his platform to directly talk to the black community, specifically cishet people that might unknowingly or knowingly be transphobic or bigoted to queer people, I think is a very powerful thing, and I think it's a necessary thing.
Also in this verse, there's possible dead naming. I don't know if Jackie is Aunt's dead name, but he brings up the name Jackie, which like unnecessary again. Something that I did like though was at the end of this second verse, he makes a statement saying that he wishes that, she would pull up and they could ride around and whatever. Obviously, I'm not a fan of the misgendering in this part, but the grief that he felt when his aunt transitioned is something that a lot of family members of trans people go through. So if he had kind of reworked this part to not misgender his uncle, then I think that it would have been a little bit better.
So, like, we're just missing the forest for the trees, right? Because we're hearing some dead naming, because we're hearing some misgendering, we hear these things that would, rightfully so, make the people that they're usually targeted at in a negative capacity feel bad. And because of those feelings, we're just completely ignoring the actual point of the song, as I understand it as a trans person, and are just being seemingly as uncharitable as possible. If your major takeaway of the song is, Kendrick Lamar, a cishet man, said the F slur and also misgendered and dead named his family members, if that's the major takeaway that you have of the song, then I feel like you haven't really thought about it too much.
It's 2 steps forward, 3 steps back, because you're doing these things to, spread awareness about the trans community and your experience of the trans community, but then you go and dead name them. you go and misgender them. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it doesn't make sense if you don't understand the narrative framing of the song, unfortunately. If you look at the lyrics, they're very clearly written in a past tense. Here, we get the first one, elementary school kids with no filter, however. This is elementary school. So at this point, and every point before it, is being told through the past tense of Kendrick Lamar when he was in elementary school. He's talking about how even in elementary school, he had learned the bigoted ways of thinking when it comes to trans people, to gay people, the flippant use of the F slur, even in elementary school. And then it goes on to cite middle school again, and eventually the present day. So if you understand the song to be a narrative retelling of events that happened in the past, well then there actually is a purpose for all of that.
In the next verse, he talks about the tension between his family members and not understanding why some of the people in his family didn't like his uncle after he transitioned. He talks about how other kids in school would stare at his uncle and, be in disbelief about who his uncle was, really highlighting that everybody around him, all these people that were supposed to be super important to him around him, were telling him that his uncle was abnormal, that his uncle was weird or different or whatever they were saying about him. Mm-hmm. And I think that he does this to highlight the difference between the way that he perceived his uncle and the way that everybody else was trying to make him perceive his uncle.
Also, he did this to show you, the viewer, the listener, how he got to the point when he's this young, how he learned from the people around him, his uncles that are transphobic to his trans uncle, his friends who are, bigoted to queer people and that they thought that his uncle was gay or whatever. He is telling you that as an elementary school kid, the people around him informed his own thoughts and behaviors. And only through the experiences that he had with his trans family members, he was able to outgrow them, to learn more than them, to understand better than them. And then he delivers this song as a method of trying to reach those people through the medium that he has the most sway with.
In this verse, he also, I think 4 times, says the F slur, which is obviously something that a lot of people had an issue with, including myself. Again, I understand he's an artist. He's trying to get that shock factor. He's trying to get that impact of saying these slurs and being like, they were nothing to me back then, and now they're so heavy, blah, blah, blah. Whatever he's trying to say about the weight of using these slurs, I get it. I understand what he's trying to do, but you can't just say it then. If you're going to make this song to talk about how problematic using these words were, don't use them. Don't desensitize them in your song. It's like if I...
Wait, so what should he have said instead? If he's trying to talk about how the F slur was so normalized that he was saying it flippantly either before or during elementary school, should he have said F slur instead? Should he have said F word? Should he have censored it? Or should he have not brought it up at all? He brought it up as a means to say that, there's a lot of people that listen to me that use this word all the time because they don't understand the hurt that it causes other people. Or they do, and that's bad. Right? But if he was to censor it, if he was to say F slur, a lot of people don't know what that is. A lot of people aren't in the sauce like, we are as trans people. They don't know what the F slur is. So he has to say it if he's going to talk about it. That's the only way. What do you want him to say? Like, the homophobic slur for gay people. We didn't know any better. We were kids and sheeple. Like, what do you want him to say?
I made a song about my journey with racism or something and then use the N-word 8 or 10 times throughout the song to show how I didn't think it was a big deal. Like,
it's an interesting equivalency here. Really. We don't have to play Oppression Olympics, but I think most people would understand that the N-word seems to carry significantly more weight than the F slur. That being said, I do think that depending on the context, theoretically, there probably could be a white person who used the N-word, but actually said it in the context that she's describing here, and have it be impactful in a similar way. Obviously, you're going to have to try to be very careful about it because it's the N-word and not the F slur, but toward the end of the song, he literally equivocates through a quote from his trans cousin helping him understand his hypocrisy, the N-word and the F slur, which I don't even agree with. I think the N-word is worse. The F slur is still bad if it's being used with negative connotation, but I don't think it's being used with negative connotation in the song.
It completely ruins the impact that he's trying to have. Don't forget about this part. Okay, we'll talk a little bit more.
How does it ruin the impact? Is what I want to know. It might ruin the impact for people in the queer community that don't like hearing the F slur for a very obvious reason, but I would be shocked that any cishet people that Kendrick Lamar is trying to talk to with this song hear the F slur and are like, wow, that's uncalled for. That's distasteful. Probably because, the day before they probably were calling, their friends the F slur for, I don't know, killing them in Call of Duty or something, right? Like, I don't think that those people were upset about the use of the F slur. I think it's just the people that the song wasn't written for that are.
So in the next part of the song, he talks about his cousin, who is also trans. Throughout the entire song, he dead names his cousin.
Fuck!
I don't think he refers to his cousin as she once. Literally not once. He refers to them as he and him a lot, but never.
Well, he does later. Hopefully we recognize that. Are you ready? I said, Mr. Preacher Man, should we love thy neighbor? The laws of the land or the heart, what's greater? I recognize the study she was taught since birth, but that don't justify the feelings that my cousin preserved. Interesting. So at the pivotal moment in the song where he's defending his trans cousin and his trans uncle from the accusations of the preacher who just outed both of them to the entire congregation, he correctly genders his cousin.
Even when he's talking about her after she transitioned, in the future, he still refers to her as him.
If we're going to keep harping on the narrative retelling of events, this is middle school. You see middle school kids with no filter, however. So everything up until this point in the song has either been before elementary school, during elementary school, or now in middle school. This is in the past.
He talks a bit about how he always knew that his cousin was different, or he knew that his cousin was, he doesn't really say what he thought his cousin was. He just says that he knew who his cousin was. And he says that he always loved them. He says that he always knew who they were and he always loved them, which is awesome. I just wish we didn't have to dead name and, misgender her at the same time. Because, again, it just kind of ruins the whole pro-trans or, trans ally thing that he's trying to do.
Does it,
I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
It is.
He also dead names...
it's not just you. It's, a variety of other people in the trans community that are rightfully upset with, a cishet person using the F slur and dead naming and misgendering. The thing is, if that's the only takeaway that you have from the song, you've kind of missed the point. If you sit with it a little bit longer and you understand who the demographic he's trying to reach is, which isn't trans people, isn't people like me, you start to understand that the language that he uses in the song mirrors the language of the people he's trying to talk to, not me and not you.
Caitlyn Jenner? For what? Literally for no reason at all.
So at this point in the narrative, this is, as he says, changed his gender before Bruce Jenner was certain. So Caitlyn Jenner transitioned in 2015. So this is a way to use a very powerful moment for trans visibility because of Bruce Jenner at the time, but Caitlyn Jenner being a athlete and media figure that was very popular, as a way to give you a frame of reference and also to show you that his trans cousin transitioned before that, right? So people's understanding of trans issues, people's awareness that trans people exist to begin with, was not very widespread. Caitlyn Jenner coming out was a very big moment for that. But his cousin transitioned before that. He's trying to tell you that at the time, in middle school, he had trans family members before a lot of people in society even knew that was a thing that could happen, which is trying to help you see why he had this process to get to the point where he's at now. He's trying to give you a frame of reference.
That's why it's so confusing to me. What are you trying to do? Are you actually trying to be an ally, or are you just trying to write about trans people to, stir up a little something? It worked.
Oh, come on. Okay. Yes. Kendrick Lamar, he just wanted to write it about trans people so we could say the F slur and dead name and misgender trans people so that he could get clout points and brownie points from the trans community that, as we could see here, it didn't work.
Towards the end of the song, it does get a bit better. He's still misgendering, he's still dead naming his cousin, but he tells a little story. He talks about a time that he and his cousin were in church and describes a moment where the pastor literally starts talking about trans people, talking about his cousin. I'll just read this next line. He is supposed to be the pastor. So it says, he said, my cousin was going through some things. He promised the world we're living in was an act on abomination and Demetrius was to blame. Imagine sitting in church. Imagine sitting in a church that you've gone to your whole entire life, and then the pastor says that you're an abomination, says that you are the reason that the world is shit.
Yeah, this happens a lot. This is a very common thing. Religion, unfortunately, a lot of religious institutions don't necessarily have the best views on trans or queer people in general. This is a very real thing that happens. It's a very powerful moment.
And says that he stood up and he starts talking to the pastor. Mr. Preacher Man, should we love thy neighbor? The laws of the land or the heart, what's greater? Oh my God, I'm rapping. I recognize the study she was taught since birth.
Wait just a goddamn second. Hold up. What is this pronoun right here? I recognize the study she was taught since birth. She. I think that's the correct one.
The laws of the land or the heart, what's greater? So we're really gonna disown the people that we love? We're really gonna demonize the people that we love? Fuck the laws of the land. I recognize the study she was taught since birth, but that don't justify the feelings that my cousin preserved. Is it really worth hurting the people that we love? Does it really justify treating your family like this?
How can you in the beginning of the song say that you don't think that he correctly gendered his cousin a single time, when at the pivotal moment where he's literally retelling an event where he called out the preacher, a very powerful authority figure in the community, correctly genders his cousin in her defense as a good ally?
Last verse.
We're not going to bring that up.
Get back into
oh
the
my
F
God.
slur and everything like that.
We're not going to bring it up. But we got to go back to the F slur. We got to go back.
And thanks him, and their bond gets closer, and the family gets closer. He says that this was the day that he chose humanity over religion. He says, I said them F-bombs, I ain't know any better.
Ooh, F-bomb. Huh. Well, if we think about it, if I'm a cishet person, and I'm not, but if I was, and I was listening to this song, and earlier he said F-bomb, 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 instead of the actual words, I don't know if I would know what that would mean. Is he saying fuck? Is that the word he's bringing up? I don't actually know. However, because he actually said the word in the past, but now he's censoring it, well, now we know what word's being censored. He's not saying I said them F-bombs meaning the word fuck, he means the F-slur now. He's helping people understand what that is. He couldn't have started it that way. I'm sorry. We're unfortunately not at the point where the general public understands even what the F-slur means, much less understands almost anything about trans people, other than the fact that they exist and they're either, okay with it or they don't like it. Like, we're just not there yet. And the song's not written for you, I'm sorry.
Mistakenly, I didn't think you'd know any different. See, I was taught words was nothing more than a sound if everything was pronounced without any intentions. Again, he's referring to the times when he used to say, the F slur, which I'm not going to say. I could say it if I wanted to because I'm a trans woman, but I'm not going to say it. He talks about how he didn't realize that it was offensive to people or whatever, but then brings up that his cousin had a talk with him one time about using this word and the hypocrisy that, he was exhibiting. If you don't know, there's this video of a Kendrick Lamar concert where he has a girl come up on stage and rap some of his song. It's a white girl that comes up, and I guess she said the N-word multiple times, and he was like, listen, you gotta bleep one word. It's not that hard. Then he made this big thing about it. Rightfully so. But it was this big thing, and everybody was applauding him for, calling out a white fan for saying the N-word.
Throwback to when a white girl said the N-word on stage in front of Kendrick at Hangout Fest.
Oh, they bleep it, thank God, my precious heart. Oh shit, they bleeped it again. Whew. I don't think I would have been able to withstand that one. Now, really quickly, because I am acting, indignant over this. I have rapped along to songs before that contained the N-word several years ago. And I said the word with a soft A. I'll admit it. I have said it. You can crucify me if you want, string me up by my feet on the cross, okay? But I don't do that anymore. And when I am on my platform now, I advocate for people to either replace the word or better just don't say it and move to the next word. That's what I advocate for now, because I understand, at least in my worldview, that in the context of me rapping along to the song, I just don't think I should be saying the word. I just don't think I should be doing it. But, that's me, a white's opinion. So, in the context of the song, you can have your gripes with it. In my view, she shouldn't have said it either. But it's a bit different than the way that he's using the F-slur in this song. And that's literally what his trans cousin points out at the end and helps him understand the hypocrisy that he had.
He brings up this conversation that he had with his cousin and says, you said, Kendrick, ain't no room for contradiction. To truly understand love, switch position. And then again, he says the F-slur multiple times and he says, we can say it together, but only if you let a white girl say the N-word. He's very clearly pointing out the hypocrisy of him saying the F-slur, while also condemning white people for saying the N-word. So, are you okay with white people saying the N-word in song if it's for, artistic freedom or whatever?
I mean, he might be, but rapping along to the song is not the same thing. If you're looking at a theoretical white person making a song about how they used to be racist, but now they're not, and they use the N-word, that's certainly different than a person rapping along to his song and saying it. There seems to be more purpose behind the writing of the song rather than simply reciting lyrics in a song. Also, while Kendrick does say in the song, because he's the vocal talent in the song, the F-slur 3 times again, it's him quoting his trans cousin. This is a quote from his trans cousin saying, Kendrick, ain't no room for contradiction to truly understand love switch position. F-slur, 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 we can say it together, but only if you let a white girl say the N-word. That's his cousin speaking. So he said F-bomb before to show that he realizes now that he shouldn't say the word, and then he's quoting his cousin in order to drive the point home to the audience that it's not good. Because the song seems to be primarily targeted at cishet black men, they'll probably understand that, a white person saying the N-word is going to make them feel some type of way, just the same way a straight person saying the F-slur might.
If you're going to be this person who makes this whole big show about white people saying the N-word, maybe don't say the F-slur.
That's the point. Oh no, I'm sorry. Listen, I've liked the Samantha Lux videos I've seen in the past. I haven't seen too many. This is the most recent one that I've seen. But come on. That's literally the point. You're saying the point, but you're not comprehending it.
Practice what you preach. That's the end of the song, and I think we've talked about all the concerns that people have had with the lyrics and with, the messaging and whatever. I hate to be the person to be like, your allyism or whatever isn't good enough. You need to do more. You need to do this. You need to do this.
Dude, but that's literally what you've been doing the whole video.
This is going to start a lot of conversations. It's like they're going to make a lot of people more open to think about their experiences with trans people, and that's a great thing. I'm not a fan of misgendering. I'm not a fan of the dead naming. I'm not a fan of using the F slur. Like, I think he missed the mark on a few things. And it's just unfortunate, It's just really, really unfortunate. It would have been such easy things to fix. Switch some of the pronouns. Change Bruce to Caitlyn. Don't say the F slur.
I will say that so I don't think that he should have not said the F slur in the times that he did. And he did censor it later on. And then he quoted his trans cousin, which if he said F-bomb the entire time for that, quoting his cousin, one, he'd be misquoting, and two, it wouldn't really work. So I think his use of the F slur is totally fine. And it would not have worked otherwise. Also, the misgendering, also totally fine and would not have worked otherwise because he's literally talking about himself in the past. And he's trying to show people how messy this kind of growth can be and understanding can be. The one thing that I will say that he could have done better is that he didn't have to say Bruce Jenner. He could have said Caitlyn Jenner. That one I do agree with. I understand why he used Bruce Jenner instead of Caitlyn Jenner because he's describing events that happened before Caitlyn came out. And I do think it still would have been fine if he said change his gender before Caitlyn Jenner was certain. I think people would still understand that, but it's still within the context of the song. And while I do think it would be fine if he changed it to Caitlyn, I don't think it's necessarily the worst thing either. I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Kendrick Lamar. You can accuse me of fucking lapping up the sweat that's fallen off of his taint or whatever, but that's not what I'm doing. I'm just looking at a massively popular media figure writing a song directed at cishet black men in specific, but cishet people in general, the majority of people that are going to be listening to his music. I'm seeing him in the current climate where they're literally trying to forcibly detransition trans people, Republicans and conservatives are. He's coming out with a song about the way that he learned to accept queer, trans, gay people in that climate, and I think it's profoundly impactful. In fact, in the videos that I've done and in this tweet thread, there have been a lot of people, cishet people, who have been like, oh shit, this actually did open my eyes to a variety of things, like Samantha did say that could happen as a result of it. So I don't know. I feel like we just completely missed the point. We've allowed the understandable and valid impact of the problematic elements of the song to completely cloud any further nuanced analysis of it. And that's unfortunate because, you don't have to agree with me, okay? You can have your qualms, you can have your disagreements, but I think this goes deeper than a disagreement. I think there's a misunderstanding here. It's not that we disagree. I think there's been a misunderstanding of the lyrics, of the actual structure of the song, which is evident. In the beginning of the song, she says that, I don't think he correctly genders his cousin once, and then he does at the apex of the song, and then goes on to censor the F slur, and then goes on to quote his cousin, showing his hypocrisy for saying the F slur by comparing it to the N-word. You have to understand the structure of the song in order to get the point, and then on top of that, you have to understand who the song is written for. It's not written for people like me that know all this shit.
So I don't know, it is cool that he made the song, and I'm glad that he made the song, and I'm not like, oh my god, cancel Kendrick Lamar, but I don't know, I feel like he could have just done a little bit more. Getting people's pronouns right is so elementary. It's so basic. Make sure to leave.
Maybe to you. I can guarantee Samantha has had experiences in her life with people that when she transitioned had a rough time getting the pronouns correct, had a rough time getting her name correct, right? I'm sure that she's had this experience. This is an experience that nearly every trans person will have. Firsthand, you understand how messy that process can be. And when he's talking about events that happened in the past, to sanitize the bigotry that he had learned and expressed either wittingly or unwittingly, and then eventually unlearned, I think would have been to the detriment of the impact the song would have to the target demographic of cishet black men and cishet people in general. I'm sorry. It might be elementary to you to get pronouns correct, to get somebody's name correct, but to people who don't really have a good understanding of trans issues, that don't know very many trans people, who now understand their family member or whatever to be trans, it's a messy process. You can't expect people to be perfect on it immediately. And she acknowledges that in the video. She understands that. But I don't know, it seems like given that understanding, a lot of these critiques kind of fall on deaf ears. Even trans people might struggle. Literal trans people themselves might struggle with correctly gendering the other trans people that have newly more recently come out. You know what I mean? Like, this has happened. It's like, it's not even relegated to cis people. I feel like we're living in a hopeful future, and that's a good thing. Like, I have a lot of faith myself for the liberation of trans people and all queer people and all oppressed people on whatever basis, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, class. I have a lot of hope for it, okay? I'm not as doomer as a lot of other people. And like, I want to be in that world where like these critiques can really hit. Like, if you can imagine a world where like trans issues are widely accepted, everybody's like being taught in school the difference between gender and sex and how to engage in the best, least problematic way with the trans people in their lives. At that point, in that hypothetical future, when we're in the perfect, trans liberated state, well then yeah, if you're gonna be, blatantly misgendering people or dead naming or whatever else, then yeah, you would have more of an argument. But that's just not the world we're in right now. And it's also not the world that the people who the song is targeted at are living in either. In fact, they're living in an even worse, version of that world than, trans people like me and Samantha are. So I don't know. Like, the intent of the song, I think, was very pure. I think it was very good. I don't think that Kendrick was trying to be like this rah-rah, trans ally, I'm the soldier fighting for trans liberation. I don't think that's what he was trying to do. I think it was just because the entire album is built around his growth as a human being, and it's very therapeutic in that way. If you listen to the entire album and read the lyrics of what he's talking about, he addresses a variety of other social issues, not just trans issues, in this song. And it's just a way for him to show people his growth and give people kind of a blueprint to understand the things that they might be doing wrong, that they didn't know hurt people, and ways that they could potentially look at things differently to grow themselves. And I think that's a good thing. And, I respect Samantha. I might be getting a little heated in this song because, I think I'm rightfully frustrated with some misreadings of the lyrics and misinterpretations and lack of context. But, I respect Samantha for what she does. And I don't want any bad blood to happen here. I just think that it was, this video missed the mark, I think. Like, even in the video that I put out, even in the tweet thread that I put out, I literally acknowledge that it's completely understandable to have your problems with the problematic elements of the song. Like this May 13th, either the day of or the day after, it's valid to be confronted with the problematic elements of this narrative and react with pain. That's literally what the story is describing, how the pain of all oppressed peoples is connected and how the ignorance passed down through generations has us hurting each other. Like the intersectional analysis of this song, I think is very important, because if a cishet black man can't understand how the F slur could be harmful, or how certain ways of talking about or thinking about gay people could be harmful, or dead naming or misgendering can be harmful, they can certainly understand how the N-word used against them can be harmful. They can understand that. That's the equivocacy that's drawn by Kendrick's cousin as he's quoting at the end. And I think that's a very powerful method of doing it. I feel like I'm repeating myself at this point. I highly doubt Samantha will ever see this video. Whenever it comes out, but hopefully there's a good amount of discourse in her community about it, and maybe she, sees things in a different light. Maybe you can still have your problems with it, but maybe come to a better conclusion. We're all talking about it though, which means it was effective. Yeah, maybe. One of the comments. I'm a transgender man. FTM. Sorry for the messy and long message. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I hope with the song encourage and inspire others to learn and educate themselves about the trans community. Not misinformed, but correctly informed. Hopefully enlighten everyone, which I think is what he was trying to do, to spread positivity and acceptance. Nice. We in the queer community point out great allies. What often isn't seen is the sometimes painful and not very politically correct path to that allyship. It can be messy, confusing, hypocritical. This song isn't for trans people, for the people at the start of the path. Exactly. Thank God. We've got some fucking based people in the chat, in the comments. Personally, being trans myself, I found it quite beautiful. Someone who listens to a lot of Kendrick, I can say this isn't his attempt to be a trans ally. This is him recounting a very personal experience about a specific situation, his thoughts and feelings on it. All right, so they seem overwhelmingly positive. So hopefully she does read these and, understands people's arguments, even if it doesn't change her opinion, which, she doesn't have to. She can have the opinion that she has. I don't give a shit. But hopefully she at least, understands where a lot of other people are coming from as well. But the video, it just seems to be the people who are mad on Twitter personified into a video. That's what I've seen here. I don't think it was a good representation of the song. This video is Connor Call. It is Jack Max, aka Max6 Lotus, on my website chat. Thanks for playing. Hope you continue to enjoy the videos. If you would like to be the next Connor Call, all you gotta do is follow me on Twitter @ConnorCC, retweet my video links when they go live. Yay! Hit up the fucking like button, leave a comment about the fact that you're cool or something, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, put all notifications on so that you can always be notified about my fucking videos when they go out, and just be the excellent person that you are, god damn it.